Hello, everybody. Welcome at this presentation, where we are going to talk about optimized machining data, and in a situation of small batch production, which is a bit different because we are all used talking about machining and tools and cutting conditions, machining conditions for mass production. And over time, there is kind of established a standardized approach to work with machining data. Now, that approach, when we talk about small batch production, we have to rethink a bit because the situation is quite different. And, you know, determining or selecting and optimizing machining data, it's a little bit like cooking. And there is a recipe. And normally, when you follow the recipe, the result should be a fine meal. Now, there are, however, differences. Some people, starting from the same recipe, will create a superb meal, while other people, following the same recipe, end up with I wouldn't call it a catastrophe, but anyway, it's hardly eatable. And what is the difference then? And what is going on if you see that? Well, the difference is the cook. And some people have what they call, we are broadcasting from Germany, some people have what they call in German Fingerspitzengefühl. They have it in their fingers, they feel it. And today is a bit about that. How to use, how to create, if you don't possess it, how to exercise that. Starting from a standard recipe, we can come up with a very good set of machining conditions in a situation what we refer to as a small batch production. And in preparation to this, I launched a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn kind of a poll where I was asking people to give me their reason why they optimize machining data. They select and they optimize. Optimize is another word for improving. And the results you can see on the screen. Nearly 50% said that an optimization process, they use it to reduce production costs. The second biggest group, 40% of the people roughly say it's to create output with a higher added value. Better quality, I suppose people understood by that. And only a minority said it's to create a more uniform output. Now, these, I just give it here as the result of that poll I launched, and within a couple of minutes I'm going to come back to it, because it's a very interesting thing to see your opinions and to oppose it later on, to confront it with something I want to put on the table here as a discussion point. My name is Patrick de Vos. I'm your host today. Over time, I'm nearly 50 years in machining. I developed kind of a concept, a model to describe a machining process, which I always use as a foundation on which I build a certain reasoning. Also here today, the optimization strategy or methodology, whatever word you want to use for machining conditions, is based on this model. Machining is a process, is a physical process where we remove material to create a finished workpiece. And this physical process means that there are a lot of phenomena taking place during the process. You have mechanical things happening, thermodynamics, chemical things are happening, and so on and so forth. And the meaning is that we have a well-balanced machining process. A machining process where things are in balance. The loads acting on a cutting tool and the load-bearing capacity of a cutting tool should be in balance. And then we have a controllable, a predictable process that delivers up to expectations. Now, all of these things, there are all kinds of variables we have to take into consideration. And it's kind of like that we need to solve an equation here. Take all the variables together, bring them in a certain order, give values to them, and that leads to a balanced machining process. And to be able to do that, one, we need people with the needed knowledge and skills to do that. And it's a wide range of things people need to know to be able to solve that machining equation. And we also need metrics. We need a measuring system to see if we solve the equation in the best possible way. And also there, we need to take those two together. We use the knowledge, we solve the equation, and we evaluate the result to see if things are okay. And if things are okay, the machining process delivers up to expectations. It's in a nutshell, that's the concept, that's the model. And in that concept, in that model, there is a bit of an issue, because if you look to all the variables we talk about, you can group them in three families. Some variables relate to the type of cutting tool you use during the process. Another set of variables relate to what we refer to as the machining strategy. How do we execute the process? And a third set of variables comes from the machining data, the machining conditions we use. And the big question here is, which one comes first? Which one determines the next one? Because these three things are related to each other. If we select a certain strategy, not every cutting tool can deliver in that strategy. So the type of strategy determines the cutting tool to some extent. I can reverse things. If you select a cutting tool, well, to use the cutting tool in the best possible way, you need to use a certain machining methodology. So it's all about, also here a balance. Well, and machining data play a major role in this, because to bring a strategy and a tool and whatever came first now, not important, but a strategy and a tool to make the combination work, that's what we do with machining data, with cutting conditions. So it's the linking element between strategy and cutting tool. And there is a fourth thing, of course, I put it a little bit aside, but that doesn't mean I underestimate the importance of it. That's the machining people. Because bringing balance between strategy and tool, and it doesn't happen automatically. Somebody needs to take the steering wheel and do things, and that's the role of people. So that's kind of the concept. I use also as a background to the presentation we are having right now. If you want to have more information on that, if you want to read up a little bit more about how those things work, there's a whole set of literature available, which you can just ask for, and there you can find much more details. Today, as always, I'm of course not alone. I have the honor of making the presentation, doing the presentation, but in the background there are two girls, Alasia and Margarita, doing the hard work, making everything work here. So the three of us hope that today we can give you an interesting hour. And there's quite a lot of things on the agenda. And we start a bit with a background on why is selecting machining data in small batch production different from machining data in mass production. And what do we have to do to take care of that difference? And the third part, just minor, we have a very limited time today, but I make some reference to extra information you can find on that. Is okay, if once we know why we are doing things and what we have to do, then the very important question comes, okay, how do we do it then? That's the practical side to it. Now, if you look to the machining industry, like I would say, not only the machining industry, the total manufacturing industry, it's very clearly shifting away from mass production to small batch production. Even in industries where people do not expect it, we find small batch type of manufacturing back. Think on automotive. People think, yeah, but it's still hundreds of thousands of the same car. Yes and no, because every car has a different color and wheels and options and interior and whatever. It's all the same, yet each one is individual. So even in that type of industry, we find small batch production. And in small batch production, compared to mass industry, put it to the extreme, if you have to produce only one workpiece, you have to be absolutely sure that that one you have to produce is good. So words like reliability, total efficiency, first pass success are really important in small batch production. And if you think about it, that reliability and so on what do we have to focus really in small batch production compared to mass industry is perhaps not only or not solely on the machining process, but a lot more also on all things around it. And especially the things that can have a negative impact on the result. Setup times, unexpected downtimes, scrapped workpieces, which in mass industry are of minor importance in the total picture. In small batch production, they become very important. Imagine you have to produce only one workpiece, one part, and after you've done all the operations, you measure, and the one unique part you have to produce is wrong. That means you have to start all over again with all the consequences related to that. And remember, there's a customer waiting for that one product. It's not just a free exercise you are doing. Okay, it's wrong. We start again. Yes, somebody will have to call the customer. And finding and optimizing cutting data, machining data in small batch production, the way we do it in mass production. How do we select, how do we optimize cutting data, machining data in mass production? Well, you take some technical experts, you take a fortune of testing tools, you go to the machine, you take a couple of hundred of workpieces you are allowed to destroy, and you start testing in a practical way. A little bit more, a little bit less, a little bit this, a little bit that, and in the end, you find the ideal set of cutting conditions. That's how we do it in mass production. That's how we've done it since ever. But today, when we are confronted with small batch production, that thing doesn't work anymore. We don't have the options or the possibilities for testing and trying and spending time and destroying workpieces and so on. We need to do it in a different way. And what we demand from cutting conditions is also different from before, because if we pull some figures out, and the figures I show you on this slide now are things I measured personally myself. It's not just from a textbook. It's going around in workshops, helping people to improve. You measure and you find things. You know, in small batch production, less than 20% of the available time, the machine spindles are actually running and producing workpieces. With other words, for those who are familiar with it, the OEE in small batch production very often is below 20%. Which puts serious question marks about the effectiveness or the efficiency of the investment in machinery. In the total manufacturing cost, in the total production cost in small batch production, the actual machining process, which is the major cost factor in mass production, here becomes a minor cost, less than 10% if you start measuring it. Planning, scheduling mostly are one big chaos in small batch production due to reasons which today we don't have time to dive in, but it means that on-time delivery, as people refer to it, on-time delivery is a metric where we measure to which extent we keep our promises to our customers. Okay, you will have the part tomorrow, and do we keep the promise then? Yes, no. It's a binary thing. Well, very often in small batch production, the on-time delivery is below 50%, and the on-quality delivery is even below 40%. What is on-quality? Well, that the first workpiece you produce, in small batch production, it could be the only one workpiece you need to produce, is correct from the first time. That is what we refer to as on-quality delivery. And a big thing, and I'm going to explain why later on, a big thing in small batch production is that people are very aware, management people are very aware of the importance of knowledgeable, skilled, motivated machining people, being it operators or engineers or planners or whatever. And that is what we are confronted with. And that means if we look to small batch production, it's not just the machining time we have to talk about, not only the process time, but we have to look at the total picture. The same for the cost. It's not just the tool cost which matters, it's the total cost we have to take into consideration. That means that evaluating a situation, it's not only are the ships well and do we have vibrations? Yes, no, but it's also about did we minimize setup times? Did we try to avoid too much machine downtimes? Did we make sure that the first part is right, is respected, or are we scrapping a lot of work pieces? And setup times and down times, problem solving times, scrapped work pieces, in the majority of cases, it points back to the machining process where something was not in balance. And that means that a balanced machining process, which is not the same as a high-performing machining process, but a well-balanced machining process, reliable, delivering the quality which is needed, predictable, controllable, that is what is most important here. And first choice must be right. Another very important thing to remember, because you don't, in a number of cases, you don't have the option of a second goer. It's must be good directly, and that means that the importance of the people controlling all of this is growing exponential. In the past, one could say we had button pushers in production. Today in small batch production, we can't afford that anymore. And the challenge in small batch production is, if I put it to one sentence, it's very clear. First time right. First time must be best time. First choice must be best choice. That is what it's all about. Very quickly, why that small batch production? Well, small batch production starts to be a strategic variability for a number of companies, meaning that by setting up small batch possibilities in their workshop, they can offer flexibility to their customers, quickly change. They can offer customization possibilities to their customers. Every workpiece is different, and still we can handle it in a reasonable time at a reasonable cost. And somehow it relates to sustainability also, because if you only produce what you need and when you need it, that means that you save a lot of resources, waste, energy, and so on. So that's the advantages. There are challenges in small batch production. It's not all gold, Small setup times is a challenge you are facing, because every new workpiece means a new machine setup, and if that takes too long, it's unacceptable. Troubleshooting is very important, and it's not only about avoiding problems, it's also about when a problem occurs, having the capacity, the capability to solve it fast. I see two long ships and I can react instantly. It's not I stop the machine, I call an expert, I wait till the expert. No, the time needed to solve a problem is important. Quality control is important. If you need to produce only one workpiece, again, it better be right the first time, otherwise you have a big issue. And that means that there are cost implications that are very different from the ones we normally experience doing mass production. From an economics perspective, it's a bit of a new situation. And don't worry, the situation is only getting worse. If you allow me to put it in a negative way, because there is a very clear trend out in the market that the variance is increasing, batch sizes are decreasing, there is an increasing pressure on delivery performance, the on-time delivery thing, there is an increasing knowledge and skills shortage. Employers are nearly starting to fight to find good people, and there are increasing sustainability demands. So it's not about, yeah, okay, but even small batch is under development. And from a machinist perspective, perhaps not in the best direction. I mentioned here sustainability. That's not the subject of today. I just want to make you aware of how sometimes strange measurements at first sight leads to really unaccepted but positive results. If you look to a machining process, one could say, is a transformation process. And you have resources and you have energy and so on. And in a machining process, there is a lot of things you put in. And not only a workpiece and so on, but you put in money and time and people and energy. A lot of things are put in, and those things in machining are transformed into, hopefully, an output with added value. Because machining, next to workpieces, or more important than workpieces, machining is a creating money process. It's not just technical fun, it has an economical purpose also. So we put in, we get out, hopefully with added value. Unfortunately, also there is a lot of waste created. And from an energetic balance perspective, from an efficient resource usage or management, it's important to have again here metrics to measure, okay, how well do we have a balance here? Do we maximize the added value output compared to the input? With other words, do we minimize the waste? And I give you an example pure on electricity. If you look to the electricity consumption, in the example I show you here, it's a 5-axis machining center. What you see is that when a machine is there, it's consuming energy, and that energy is not only going into the machining process, because I need energy to remove material, but there's so many other things consuming energy on a machining center. There's the cooling installation and the cooling of the machine and the CNC control. All of those things consume energy. And if you really start to measure, what you find out is that less than 20% of the energy consumption of a machining center is related to the machining process. That means 80% is related to other things. And if you combine that with that in small batch production, as I already mentioned, very often OEE is below 20%, you end up with a very strange situation. And I'm going to try to illustrate it with an example. Imagine you have 8-hour shift, and with a certain setup, you have 1 hour cutting time to finish a workpiece. That means that, if you take the average OEE and so on, in 8 hours you have 6 hours idle time, setup, the troubleshooting, waiting, whatever. The machine is there but not running, not producing workpieces. And 2 hours she's producing workpieces. That means during 2 hours she's using full energy consumption, the 20% for the process included, and the other 6 hours only 80% energy. That means in one shift, the machine is consuming 6.8 energy units and produces 2 workpieces. If you manage to create a situation where you can finish 3 workpieces per day by reducing the idle times, imagine you can push or pull off 1 hour, that gives you 5 hours idle time, 3 hours machining time, and that gives you a total energy consumption of 7 units to produce 3 workpieces. Conclusion, if I look to the energetic balance, in situation 1, you have 3.4 energy units in average per workpiece, and in situation 2, 2.3 energy units. That's 30% savings per workpiece. Producing more workpieces by reducing the non-cutting times on a machine gives you a better energetic balance overall. I use this as an illustration that sustainability is not about the speed of machining. It's about the much broader picture. Now, why do we need to do machining data optimization in mass production? Because the machining process is the dominant cost factor. That's to reduce costs. In small batch production, we have to look at differently because it's not just a machining process. It's the total thing that we have to put money on. Costs of scrapped workpieces are important, are very much influencing the results. And that means that we need a new way of thinking where words like predictability, controllability, reliability are much more important. And if you look to, very short now, because this is a subject on its own, but if you would be a manager of a machining workshop, and if you look to your commercial activities, what you like is that you can charge high prices to your customers because that would maximize your profit. But there is a risk that if you put your prices too high, that you start to lose orders to competition. So there's a limit to where you can push your prices. The market, your customers, they try to do the opposite. They try to push the prices down. And if you want to keep your market share, to some extent, you will have to take that into consideration. However, there is a limit to where you can go. Otherwise, you start to cut too much in your profit, and that is jeopardizing the future of your company, perhaps. Or even in a worst case, forget about the profit, you start to cut or offer prices which don't even cover your costs. So also there is a barrier, and in between, that is your maneuvering space. From a company economics perspective, you have everything covered and you make a reasonable profit. And from a marketing perspective, okay, you are competitive on the market. The black thing in the middle is where we want to be, where we should be. And the question is the two borderlines, the window in which we can maneuver. Where are they? And there are two opposite movements again. Customers push prices down, the market pushes the prices down. You, from a company management perspective, you want to have your high prices. And that means that how you run your company, how you run your production, depending on in which situation you are, your target is to reduce production costs, or could be to produce your production cost if you are facing too low prices pushed by the market. If you want to increase your prices and convince the market of that, that's another way of working. That's a more offensive. The first one is defensive. The second one is offensive. You from a marketing perspective, you tell the market, yeah, wait, my prices are high, but, and then you start talking about added value. I deliver fast. I can handle variability very easy. My quality is very constant. All that type of stuff. And if you are in the middle, then you found the golden egg, and you better are very careful with it. That's about stabilizing the situation. And do you understand now the poll I posted on LinkedIn? Reduce production costs for those. Can I translate the results by saying that 50% of the people who answered this poll are in a defensive situation? Oh, the market is pushing my prices too much down. I have to reduce my costs. The second thing is create a more uniform output. Can I translate that only a minority is in the middle part there? I want to stabilize that. That's why I do it. And the third one is I want to create output with higher added value. That's the people with the offensive strategy. I want to gain market share. I want to convince customers about what I can do for them. Just in between this little thing, because machining is not just technical fun. Machining is also an economical situation, an economical exercise, and everybody is involved in that. Management, engineers, operators, and in small batch production, a major role is also for quality inspection people. Because quality inspection people, they should be strongly involved in the machining process because, again, 90% of bad quality they potentially measure finds its root cause in the machining process. So there must be a constant communication between quality control and machining. Back and forth is very important. One element I just want to mention, I don't have time to go in details, but one I want to mention is a technique which is called group technology. Group technology is something which is developed already back in the 80s of the previous century in countries like Belgium and Holland, where a lot of the industry was already back then being in the subcontracting industry, facing small batch things. And it's a technique where we do not for every individual workpiece start all over again to determine how are we going to do this and which tools are we going to use and so on and so forth. But we group workpieces in families with similar features so that the only thing we have to do kind of when we are confronted with a new workpiece is look in which family we can put it, and then everything is fixed. We know how to do it, which tools, cutting conditions, which machines, and so on and so forth. And I give you here an example how this can work in practice. What you see here, the part in the blue part in the middle is what we refer to in group technology thinking as a complex workpiece. It's an artificial workpiece with some features in it. And for each of those standardized features is determined a machining strategy, a tool, and cutting conditions. So the only thing somebody has to do when he's confronted with a drawing is find back the features. I recognize this, I recognize this, I recognize that, and kind of the everything is fixed. Everything is arranged for. Of course, using this demands for highly skilled and trained people. Because in reality, even if we have standardized things, we'll see that there are some minor things people will have to do while the machine is going on. I go back to my cook, he follows the recipe, but some know that sometimes they have to do a little bit more salt or whatever, depending on things. Tool selection in small batch production is also different. Where normally in mass production we think in terms of performance and cost efficiency and so on, while flexibility and versatility, if we talk about tooling, are much more important things in small batch production. It's about stability of the process, predictability of the process, reliability of the process, and here, the key thing is that you will have to identify those tools who offer you that to the maximum. And a second thing, because this exercise is not only technical, the second thing is if you reduce the number of cutting tools in your workshop because you base them on versatility and stuff like that, you better make sure that you have them available. That means availability of the tools. Lead times when they are not available are as crucial as the technical features. Having the most universal tool in the world, but it's not available, doesn't serve any purpose. Multi-purpose, versatile, universal, that are the words we talk about here. And how the tools behave during machining, with other words, how does wear develop, is a second thing that we have to care about, and I'm going to come back to it. That means if you look to global feature, because people sometimes say, yeah, but what is a versatile tool then? Define a versatile tool. Well, that's what you see here. A versatile tool, and I'm not going to read, is robust, easy cutting, predictable in different situations, and so on and so forth. These are the features you have to look for. And availability, the part in the red here, and knowledge of the operators, of the engineers. They have to know this tool inside out because they are going to use it so often. Implementing flexible or universal tools is about standardization, is about finding balances between things, and it's about training operate. And I take an example here. I took it from Seco, where as a tool supplier, a tool supplier must have in its range, in its offer, all kinds of different tools, high-performing tools, cost-efficient tools, tools delivering extreme high quality, and versatile tools. That's an obligation for a supplier. You want to serve the market. And there are different types of customers in the market. On the other hand, the individual customer, he needs help, advice in, yeah, but in that huge offer, which are now the tools that are for me? And that's on a macro scale. That's the relation between supplier and customer. And you see here an example of different types of face milling cutters. And every face milling cutter is against a number of criteria: edge strength, surface finish of the machine surface, economical price per cut, and so on, is ranked and compared to the others. And this makes selection easier. In my case, where this and this and this is important, okay, when you have a matrix like this, this is the tool I need. But this, not only on macro scale, this also needs to be available in a workshop on micro scale, in a workshop where you have a number of tools, and those tools are universal, but then you have to help the operators. A second example here, in which material do I use which tool best? It's one could call it, yeah, an SOP, standardized operating procedures, machining strategies. I keep that for next time. Next month, the 22nd of May, we are going to spend, because time is too short, we are going to spend a full hour on how do we select machining strategies in small batches of high quality products. So that is for next month. Machining data selection, as I already said, in mass production is trial and error testing, and then we find it out. In small batch production, we have to do it different. Because in mass production, we have a rather standardized operation over a longer time, while in small batch production, every new workpiece can create a different set of demands. First choice must be best choice principle is extremely important. That means we need to find a trade-off between performance and costs and reliability, where performance or cost in mass production are key. In small batch production, reliability has a much bigger impact. Something that some people perhaps here will have difficulty swallowing, but anyway, the traditional tool life models and calculations can't be applied. I don't say don't work, I say can't be applied, can't be used in small batch production. I clarify that a little bit later. And key principles are to avoid scrapped workpieces, start conservative, and adjust based on in-process observations you make. And in the question, should I go for long tool life or should I go for high cutting speed? I would say in small batch production, long tool life is more important than high cutting speed. Supplier recommendations are okay, but they are just guidelines. It gives you starting values. It's up to the operator, the engineer, to fine-tune those, taking into consideration his own reality. And I urge you also to take a step-by-step approach. Some people, they start, they see, and they start to change everything. It's not the best way of working it. And toolware, constant observation of toolware, which type, how does it develop, how big is going to help you a lot in improving choices you made. And yeah, what worked in the past is very valid, and it's very advised to keep that documented for the future, so that not each time you have to reinvent everything each time you have a new workpiece. If you want to make it a little bit more concrete, start with feed selection. Feed should be as high as possible within what is possible. Second thing to consider is the depth of cut. And depths of cut in general, I would say it's advisable within limits to have them as big as possible. And they should be in balance with the feet also, because feet is important, depth of cut is important, but the ratio between feet and depth of cut is also important if you want to control how ships are formed. Ship control is there, your practical element that helps you to evaluate. This is your metric that helps you to evaluate, did I do good? Did I do well in selecting feed and depth of cut? Next comes cutting speed, and there you have the thing, do I go for high cutting speeds and do I give in on tool life, or do I prioritize tool life and give in on cutting speeds? As I already said, in small batch production, tool life is more important. I said several times now, as what is possible. Use big feeds in what is possible. That means that in small batch production, what you have to be aware, what every operator or engineer needs to know, is the window of opportunities, as I sometimes call it. Because if you take into consideration all the limitations due to mechanical effects and thermal effects and tribological effects during the process, you kind of create a volume in which every combination of cutting data is within what is possible. If you respect that, the number of practical problems during machining is going to be reduced enormously. And why is that important? Because that reduces your idle times, your unexpected standstills. And that is what we are after in small batch production. Within your window of application, your window of opportunities, the next thing to consider are the economical thing. How do I manage to have the best possible combination of cost factors and productivity factors and delivery time and so on and so forth? That's the economical side to it. Start with manufacturing or supplier recommendations, but adjust. Ship control is a major metric in this exercise. And sometimes I like to say use the SAFE, because it's about safety, security framework. Start with recommendations, but on a conservative side. Adjust based on what you observe during the process. Focus on reliability and not on productivity. And evaluate and refine based on the results in process you see, and most important, the quality results you see after the operation. Consistency, reliability, predictability, having constant high quality output is much more important than productivity in small batch production. Productivity of the machining process. So, observation of a process in small batch production, real-time observation is very important in small batch production, because there you see what needs to be done, and there you need that Fingerspitzengefühl. That I see, I hear, and I know how to react to create a superb machining operation. There are all kinds of calculators available to help us with that. because next to the physical side, what I'm describing here, you have, of course, the mathematical side, calculations needs to be done, and so on and so forth. But that today, there's a whole list or bunch of calculators available to help us for that. Implementing this type of thing, it's about first, make sure that you have expert people employed in the company, and create or ask them to create the best possible machining environment. Make sure it's clear for everybody what is most important in the whole thing. That it's not about productivity and speed and fast. No, it's more about reliability, controllability, quality, and that type of things. Select your strategy. How do we do that? That's for next session we have. Select your tool. We already talked about that at previous sessions. You can see the recordings for that. And make sure at least those two are already in line with what is important for the company. Next, select the highest possible feed, but stay within your volume of opportunities, possibilities. Select the biggest possible depth of cut, but make sure not just the biggest possible depth of cut, but feed and depth of cut must be in balance. And ship formation is there your metric that tells you if the relation is okay. And last but not least, you select your cutting speeds to fine tune. That's in a nutshell the steps to take. Key in this is how do tools behave. And as I said, in small batch production, you don't always have the opportunity to do the traditional tool life stuff and so on. You will have to do a more statistical approach. Look in general, look how tools wear out and depending on in which situation they were used and if what you see is acceptable, non-acceptable, and based on what you observe, correct for the future. Operators play in this thing, and I would say it's not just operators, it's also engineers, even managers. They play a very important role because here we don't need button pushers anymore. Here we need really machining experts, people who understand what's going on and who are well informed by management about the importance of a scrapped workpiece, a reworked workpiece, the so-called minor stops. And as a manager, you have to make sure your company culture is in line with this. Because it's for me easy to say you have to give more responsibility to the operators, but as management, you have to allow that. If you say the operator should take a bigger responsibility in this, you have to allow him to do that. And you have to help him to make it possible. So training, mentorship, expertise, knowledge transfer, it's all very important in because nobody is born as a skilled machinist. You build those people. People have to know about the technical stuff, the economical stuff. You have to stimulate that they think proactive and not just reactive. Don't wait until a problem arises. If you see things going in the wrong direction, act proactive and stimulate your engineers and your programmers to do that. But once again, for that, you need to help them, to train, to educate, and so on, and convince them to share their experiences with others. It's a very tricky thing in the machining world because machining expert tends to like to keep their little secrets secret. And for the sake of the company, that's not the best thing. Help them develop troubleshooting guidelines for the junior people in your organization to help them. Provide hands-on training. If you say this is from now on our basic face milling cutter, then make sure everybody in the company knows how to use this milling cutter in different circumstances. Encourage process ownership. this is my machine, this is my work pieces, I own this, I take responsibility for this. Build on continuous education. Um, Cross-functional team collaborations are important. As I already said, quality inspection people should be in constant communication with machining people, because those two needs to talk to each other. They can learn so much from each other. And one I put a little bit apart, because I think it's important, but yeah, we can end up in strange discussions here. I would say we all talk about motivation of people, but facilitate motivation. And how do you facilitate motivation? I don't say, how do you create motivation? I say, how do you facilitate it? Make it easier. That's the financial side. Because I'm a firm believer in, if you pay your people peanuts, your company will employ only monkeys. So it's a very simple thing. The step by step, what we took very fast here, much more in depth. We don't have time today, because I see we are already pushing time. But there is extra information available on that. If you want to have a more detailed description of that step by step approach. Small batch production, one could say, it's the next thing after mass production. And if it's the next reality, then we need the next step in how we approach machining as a production model or concept or process. I have kind of been talking about that. That means that tool selection will be different. Tool selection is much more about reliability, universality, that type of things when we select tools. It's not about performance anymore, or just performance. Machining strategies, we didn't discuss it in detail, that's for next month, but machining strategies must also focus on the non-cutting time. It's not just making the operation as fast as possible, but it's also all the things around the operation that we need to take into consideration. And the machining data optimization, selection and optimization in the end, the basic thing is you don't have time for testing and trying, and you don't have the possibilities to destroy first 20 work pieces. So you need the first time right thing. That's what we talk about. And extremely important are operators, engineers, management. It's about knowledge, having insight in things. It's about skills, the Fingerspitzengefühl. It's about making available equipment for people, and not only making it available, but teaching, training them in how to use the equipment. And last but not least, it's about the mindset of people, the motivation. Because that's the closing stone. If you don't create that sense of urgency with your engineers and operators when it comes to machining, because there is not a lot of time, because it's only one workpiece and the customer is already waiting at the door for the workpiece, all the rest will not really be fully exploited to be successful. Very short, very fast. Yet I see we are very, very close already to the 1 hour. I don't know. Let me quickly check if there are questions we can take care of right away. Yeah. Yeah, I see there's quite a lot of questions, and we have limited time. You know what? I try to take some questions here, I think, which are for everybody of interest to know, and the other ones we will handle later on in the comments, or we see what we do. One question is about material selection. How is the material selection taken into into consideration to reach a good result. Yeah, you put your finger there on what could be the most important variable in the whole machining process, next to the cutting tool and so on. That's the workpiece material, and it's. I like the question as such because you put your finger on the major reason for irregularities during the process. Because your machine tool is rather fixed, and your cutting tool, once you select it, is rather fixed, and all those things. But yeah, a material, yeah, it's steel, yeah, there are a million types of steel. It's stainless steel, yeah, there are a million types of stainless steel. And even if you say, yeah, but it's 3 or 4, yeah, if you take 3 or 4 from different batches, again, there will be differences. Yet there is a norm, but the norm is that means that the cook, the little bit of salt, the Fingerspitzengefühl, that is where we needed to handle those variabilities in workpiece material. We can prepare the big lines, but the fine tuning, the little bit salt, pepper, that type of stuff, that is done in process while machining. Very, very, very good question. Thank you for it. Which batch size do you consider big, average, or small? When I do master classes on machining excellence, that's a chapter on its own. There are no values. I'm not going to say 5 or 50 or 20 or whatever. You remember the page where I gave you figures? Where OEE is below 20% and machining costs are below 10%. I take their industry norms. What we see in reality compared to what we see in the ideal world, where everything kind of is under control. And if we see big deviations, that is for us a lead, a help, a metric to say, okay, here we are confronted with small batch type of production because machining is minor compared to idle times. Or this is mass production because in the total picture setup doesn't really matter. It's so little compared to the total production time of the total batch that we say this is mass production, or in between. Defining this has not really to do with the number of workpieces in the batch, but with how the workshop is organized and is functioning. That is helping us with that question. The next question. Wait. Do I, wrong in general terms, got unexpected. Wait, I have to. Got inexpensive and reliable cutting tools is better than state-of-the-art tooling. Ooh. Now I have to be careful because I'm rather sure a lot of tool suppliers are listening in here also. State-of-the-art tooling for a supplier, it's important at all times to be capable to deliver state-of-the-art tooling. The latest of the latest in line with the latest insights in research and things like that. That important innovative thing in the company strategy. It's very important. But a good supplier, next to state-of-the-art tooling, which very often is rather critical, sensitive, expensive, not given to everybody to use it because lack of knowledge and stuff is one thing, but a good supplier also must be capable of offering the other things. And the other things are reliability, predictability, versatile, and so on. That also must be in the, because it's the individual customer that has to determine what he or she needs most in his or her production situation. Now, the word unexpensive, for me, unexpensive is more a commercial thing than rather a technical thing, because unexpensive, whatever type of tooling you select, if your supplier gives you a big discount, even a state-of-the-art tool becomes unexpensive. So I do not like really that unexpensive is put as an alternative for state-of-the-art. It's not the correct comparison. State-of-the-art means expensive, I know. But if you give as a supplier a big discount, it becomes unexpensive for the user. You are mixing here commercial thinking and technological thinking a bit. Oh, I'm already over time. One question is coming back several times. Is more information available? Can I have a copy of the presentation? What about the pocket? All those things, yes, they are available for you. Just let us know. Let us know your email address, and we send you things later on. This thing is recorded also and remains available on social media for later watching also. Okay, I'm already over time. Just one question. X or more. Where do I find information on the matrices for... on the 2 pages I showed as an example. For matrices to take decisions on which tool to use where. Also there, more information is available. Let us know and we send you more information so you see more in detail how those things work and so on and so forth. I stop here because we have to respect time. One last word on people. I already said nobody's born as a skilled, knowledgeable machining expert. We are all created, and the creation process is education, training, mentorship. That is, I would say, if a company is in small batch production or involved in small batch production, perhaps the number one in critical things in the company is did I do necessary things to make sure that my people are really capable of handling this. And there's a famous saying, some people say, yeah, but it's very expensive to train people, and what if the people leave then? Yeah, okay. But on the other hand, what is the cost of having untrained, unskilled people in your workshop? Could be a lot more. Thank you on behalf of my 2 colleagues here and myself. I hope it was an interesting hour. This is a little bit incomplete because we didn't talk about machining strategies. That's for next month. I already invite you here to come and listen to that part, because that is a bit the missing link still in this story. How do I select the correct machining strategies in small batch production? You can send an email to me, you can send an email to Alesia. If you want more information, whatever questions you have, send us an email and we promise you we answer you as fast as possible. Thank you very much and looking forward to see you next time.